Holy Gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Luke.
Glory to thee, O Lord.
Jesus took with him Peter and John and James and went up on the mountain to pray. But while he was praying, the appearance of his face changed, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly they saw two men, Moses and Elijah, talking to him. They appeared in glory and were speaking of his departure, which he was about to accomplish at Jerusalem. Now Peter and his companions were weighed down with sleep, but since they had stayed awake, they saw his glory and the two men who stood with him. Just as they were leaving him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." Peter did not know what he said. While he was saying this, a cloud came and overshadowed them, and they were terrified as they entered the cloud. Then, from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, Jesus was found alone, and the disciples kept silent, and in those days told no one any of the things they had seen. On the next day, when they came down from the mountain, a great crowd met him. Just then, a man shouted, "Teacher, I beg you to look at my son, who is my only child." Suddenly a spirit seizes him, and all at once he shrieks and throws him into convulsions until he foams at the mouth. It mauls him and will scarcely leave him. I begged your disciples to cast it out, but they could not. Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you and bear with you? Bring your son here." While he was coming, the demon dashed into the ground in convulsions. But Jesus rebuked the unclean spirit, healed the boy, and gave him back to his father. And all were astounded at the greatness of God. Everyone was amazed at all that he was doing. This is the gospel of the Lord.
Praise be to thee, O God.
So please be seated. The readings from Exodus and Corinthians talk a lot about Moses' face shining. And there's a whole kind of industry built up on the idea of trying to make our faces shine, you know, like the beauty industry of makeup and all the kind of stuff you can put on to make your face look better. And I remember vividly, when I was young, I used to have this really crummy job in a pub as a dishwasher and floor swabber and that kind of thing. And I had this friend who used to do this crummy job with me. And then we'd stand side by side dishwashing, mopping the floor or whatever else we had to do. And we were both a bit broke. He was an artist and basically doing this crummy job just to kind of keep him as he developed his art. And at that time I was a kind of monk. I was living in a kind of community and just earning a bare minimum wage just to pay our bills. And so we were both short of cash and we were both living a fairly austere kind of life. And then sometimes to make the day better, when we came out we'd buy ourselves a cake and we would share it. And there's this bakery called Forfar's that made these really nice cakes. And so when we came out of the place after working, we went to Forfar's and we bought a cream cake. And you know, sometimes when we buy a cream cake, it comes in a little cardboard kind of angle thing. Well, we got the little cardboard angle thing, and we sawed it in half, because cream cakes are kind of squashy, aren't they? If you just press them, they just go... And then we gently sawed it in half so it was not spoiled. And then we had half each. And I remember to this day, he bit his half, and his face just lit up. His eyes sparkled and his face shone. It was just such a nice cake. The trouble is, that kind of shining face doesn't last very long. My brother-in-law, I remember once, he's quite a laid-back kind of guy. He's a kind of placid, you know, laid-back bloke. Nothing much moves him, nothing much impassions him or anything. But one time I saw his eyes really sparkle. We're up in this little light aircraft and he was just about to jump out and go parachuting. And I vividly remember his face just before he went up, just before he actually jumped out the aeroplane. His face was kind of shining and then whoosh, down he goes. But again, that kind of shining face doesn't last very long. And the thing about Moses' shining face was that it lasted. And it didn't last because he put on makeup each day, and it didn't last because he just had a cream cake or gone skydiving. It just shone all the time. And in fact, it shone so much that his friends and family and neighbours couldn't look at it. They felt intimidated by it, and so he put on a veil to cover his face so he didn't freak out his neighbours. And Paul makes a lot of this idea. He talks about the reason that Moses' face was shining. And the reason was that the Lord had shown Moses his glory, kind of. I'll just go back to that passage now. Moses actually said to the Lord, and I kind of wonder if this isn't a little bit cheeky or what, but Moses, if you remember the story, he had just been to Egypt. He had seen the burning bush, he'd gone back to Pharaoh, he just turned the river Nile into blood, he had just organised the plagues, the plague of lice, the plague of flies, the plague of frogs, the plague of this, the plague of that. Finally, there was the plague on the firstborn, when every household had its dead, and the great cry went up for Egypt, and the Pharaoh said to Moses, "Get out, I never want to see you again." And they chased him to the sea, and then Moses parted the sea with his stick, and went through the sea on dry land. The sea then returned and drowned the Egyptian army. After that, Moses saw, not only after their deliverance, their exodus, if you like, their departure, he also saw the Lord feed them with the manna every day for 40 years. But he also saw them give them water out of a rock. In other words, Moses had seen some pretty spectacular stuff by now. He's seen some pretty cool things. He's seen the Lord do extraordinary things. He's been, if you like, at pivotal moments in history. And then, having seen all these things, he then says to the Lord, "Show me your glory." And I kind of think, well, haven't you seen enough? I mean, what else is there? But something in him thought, there's something missing. There's something he doesn't understand about all this. There's something more that he wants to grasp. So he says to the Lord, "Show me your glory." There's something about the Lord that he doesn't understand and he wants to know. So the Lord, if you like, had brought them all out of Egypt. They'd invited them to tea, because by the mountain, it says, all the elders of Israel went and ate with the Lord, and they saw this vision of him on his throne, and there's this amazing sea of glass and stuff, and they went up and they ate and they drank with him. So if you like, the Lord went through the whole thing of the plagues and the Exodus and everything, just so he could sit and eat with them, so he could spend time with them. Like a kind of picnic in the desert. And then, having seen all these things, Moses then says, "Show me your glory." And so, the Lord says to him, "You cannot see my face, for no man shall see me and live." He says, "Behold, there's a place by me where you'll stand on the rock, and while my glory passes by, I'll put you in a cleft of the rock, and will cover you with my hand until I pass. Then I'll take away my hand, and you'll see my back, but my face you won't see." So in other words, there's something about the Lord which cannot be approached, because he's so holy, Moses would die if he saw it. And then they arrange it. The Lord does this thing. He puts him in the cleft of the rock, and then it says, "And the Lord descended and stood him there and proclaimed his name." So when Moses said, "Show me your glory," the Lord responded by saying, "No, you're not going to see me, but I'm going to say my name." And then he says his name. He says, the Lord, a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, keeping steadfast love for 1,000 generations, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, who will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity on the fathers, the children and the children's children to the 3rd and 4th generation. If you think about that, there's a bit of a paradox there. He says, his glory, his name, is to be abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness, to forgive iniquity and transgression, and not forgive iniquity. So he says, the Lord's glory is to forgive and not forgive. So you think, well, how does that work? Surely there's a bit of a contradiction there. How can you forgive and always punish evil? Surely forgiving is not punishing evil. How can you do both at the same time? How does that work? But then when he actually saw all that and heard all that, then he came down from the mountain. And then his face shone like it had never shone before. It shone so much that the Israelites couldn't look at it. And it shone for the rest of his life. And it meant that wherever he went, in front of his neighbours, the other people, he had to cover his face so that he wouldn't intimidate them. And Paul says that veil kind of symbolises the fact that they were separated from God. But he says, now something has happened and we don't have the veil anymore. We're not separated anymore. He said, something has happened so that we, with unveiled faces, can gaze upon the face of the Lord, the one that Moses could not see. So the question is, well, what's happened? It says in this one from the Gospel that Moses, and Elijah were talking with Jesus. And they were talking about his exodus. It's the same word they used about the Israelites leaving Egypt. They were talking about what he was going to do in Jerusalem, which somehow is like what Moses did in Egypt. He's referring to Jesus' glory. Now, his face shone. Jesus' face did at that time, so obviously there's a glory in common there. But it was Jesus' glory to show the Lord's steadfast love and faithfulness, to show mercy and forgiveness, and to destroy evil. And he did that on the cross. It was Jesus' glory to go to the cross on our behalf, so that evil would be destroyed on the cross. He took our evil on himself on the cross, so that when he died, evil would also die. And yet, when he rose again, he did that to offer us grace and forgiveness. So that whatever evil was in us, we can then put on the cross, and he can forgive us. And that way, it is the Lord's glory to forgive us and to destroy evil simultaneously. It was his glory to show his friends that. And that vision they saw on the mountain on that day, when it said, and his face was changed and his garments shone like lightning, that was like a vision of his glory after he's raised from the dead and ascended to the Father's side. It's like a glimpse of the future. Because after the cloud had lifted, he was back to normal. But that cloud is kind of symbolic of the presence of God among them. Because when the Israelites left Egypt, it said the cloud went ahead of them through the desert to lead them the way. A cloud of smoke, a cloud by day, and a pillar of flame by night. And you remember that from the song, Bread of Heaven. It says, let the fiery, cloudy pillar guide me all my journey through. And it's because that presence of God, the cloud and the fire, led them all the way through the wilderness till they reached their journey's end. And that hymn, Bread of Heaven, is about the Israelites travelling through the wilderness to their journey's end. And therefore it's about us travelling through our life, guided by the presence of God through the wilderness of the world, in which the Lord promises us the bread of heaven and the living water, to keep us on our way till our journey's end, until we go to him to be with him at the end, at the last, till we enter the promised land, which is, if you like, when we die and go to be with him. And so I was wondering, why did they have this little story of the boy who has these fits because of the demon in him straight afterwards? And if you like, it's a sign of what Jesus will do for us. If you like, we're in that state where we can't control ourselves, where we're afflicted, and where someone is trying to kill us. It's like this demon is trying to kill the boy because he despises him. And the enemy, the prince of this world, is trying to kill us and despise us. And Jesus, by the thing he's going to do in Jerusalem, his departure, his exodus, is going to save us like he saved that little boy. He's going to deliver us from the one that hates us and save us from death. That's his promise to us. And that's his glory. And that is what is supposed to make our faces shine forever. That is how he will make us shine and stand before him. That is how he will take away the veil separating us from God, so that we can stand before him and look at him. Something which Moses couldn't do. That's how the Lord will bring us to himself. And just as the Lord took the Israelites out of Egypt so he could be with them, first of all they came to Sinai and they ate and drank with him, and then he would just stay with them all the way through their journey. The whole point of it was so they could be together. And the whole point for us coming to the Lord is so that we could be together with the Lord for the whole of our life, for the whole of our journey, so he can make our faces shine. And I saw this once very dramatically in a man. I think it happens in other people, but it stuck in my mind because there's this man, this huge bloke, a gang member, a criminal, a murderer, drug dealer in America, massive bloke, big, heavy, strong, arrogant guy. And I saw him boasting and cursing and telling everyone how he's violent and he's fearless and he'll do anything. And then he met the Lord. And his face changed. And you couldn't mistake him because he's so big and so heavy and so strong and everything else. I mean, you couldn't mistake him for anyone else. But he was so changed, you kind of think, who is this guy? Because he's lost his arrogance, and he's lost his hatred and his anger. And his face was lit up with happiness. Because now he too has made that journey from death to life. He has met the Lord and looked at him. Now his face is shining and he is changed. And that's his promise to us, to all of us and to our neighbours. That we can come before him. We can have the veil lifted. We can look at him and he'll make our faces shine and give us life forever. And that is the good news.